I've got my coffee socks on this morning, so clearly I'm ready. Hello and welcome to eCommerce Matters, brought to you by BlackCurve. We help e-commerce businesses make pricing decisions. Today's title is, Are You Accidentally Price Fixing? I'm joined today, as ever, by Dr. Rob Horton, Product Director at BlackCurve, and my name's Philip Huthwaite, founder of BlackCurve, with almost 10 years in the pricing tech space. So without further ado, here we go. Welcome, Rob. Welcome. I didn't give you a funny intro today, actually. I'm sorry, I realised I didn't come up with a funny intro.
I appreciated that I wasn't the fashionista of pricing or best dressed in pricing or whatever it is. So
I must admit, they do require some brain power for me to spend a minute thinking about it. And pizza was calling me, so I decided to eat pizza rather than come up with a name for you. So I apologise. Next week I will do better and make sure I come up with an equally good name. Or are you telling me you don't like them? That's the.
Oh yeah, it keeps people interested, I guess. We just need Manny back on. We found out our little secret about how you sort your SEO on episodes out, and apparently you get the marketing guy on it because he heavily prioritises the episodes.
Yes, his episode is funnily pinned to all the various panels at the top of the news feed. But hey, if you're in it, why not? Why not? And if you've got control,
put your thumb on the scales.
Exactly. Why not? So today's title is, Are You Accidentally Price Fixing? And it's interesting to say that we don't just randomly come up with these titles. There are a lot of thought came into it, and I'd like to have a shout out for our chairman Martin Fincham for sending us in the direction of this particular podcast, because it's actually off the back of a Telegraph article which we'll look at later. We are going highbrow today. It's none of the mainstream. We've gone broadsheet today, people. But yeah, so it should be really interesting topic, and I've certainly done some reading about it, and also looked at my own depths of my notebook again. Scary place that is as well, to support today's podcast. So in terms of, are you accidentally price fixing, I thought it might be worth starting with what is price fixing and exploring that, just so we set the level playing field, so we know what we're dealing with. So Rob, in your words, what's price fixing?
Well, I can do better in my words, because it's often best to go to a source. So I know at school they say never quote Wikipedia, but I'm going to quote Wikipedia. But fundamentally, price fixing is an agreement between participants on the same side of the market to buy or sell a product, service, or commodity at a fixed price or maintain market conditions. So what that means in reality is colluding in the market. So we're both selling something, the same thing, and we know we're the only people selling it. And I go to you and say, hey, Philip, we're the only two people selling this. Should we charge a little bit more? And you go, yeah, Rob, that sounds like a great idea. That's price fixing, fundamentally.
So it's whether or not we've had a conversation. It's where, two competing entities have had a conversation. Generally speaking, a lot of the time when this takes place, it is conversation based, because you don't want things like that to be in writing, and it's an absolute no-no, this collusion, because there's various instances of it. The one that I found was that was actually quoted in this Telegraph article, which was, I should say who it's written. If we're getting our sources correct, I should say who it's written by Tim Wallace on the 25th of August 2020 on the Telegraph. And the one that he mentioned was in 2016 rather, the Competition and Markets Authority issued warnings about online behaviour, and they fined business more than £160,000 for colluding with a rival to promise not to undercut each other when selling posters and frames on Amazon. That sounds like colluding to me, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sounds pretty indefensible.
So it's 160,000. It's not. It's a reasonable fine as well for it.
Yeah, well, it's the kind of thing where you have to act aggressively to enforce, right? Because if the punishment doesn't heavily outweigh the benefit, people are just going to do it and hope they don't get caught.
So why is Why is it considered such a bad thing?
Because it's anti-consumer fundamentally. If you if we go back, I know we talk about market theory a lot, but if you go back to market theory, you're not letting the relationship between buyer and seller set the price in the market. So demand set the price. You're just artificially setting the price because you have power that the other person hasn't. And it's a big argument for regulation, basically, because this is probably another tangential conversation, but free markets don't really work in practice because of monopolies. I know there's very complex arguments about collapse monopolies and whatever, but fundamentally, if there are 4 people selling a product and people need it, they can't, and in theory, charge what they want up to a given point, right? And if they're talking, they're not trying to act competitively with each other, which is what free markets depend on. They're just saying, well, why don't we all charge a huge amount for it, and the consumer has to take it. Really, like, where this becomes really, really punishing is in like pharmaceuticals, say, where you actually have a product that someone needs to stay alive, like insulin or something in the US is actually a key one. And when you have a few people who control the supply, they can effectively collude and price fix and drive that price up because people have to pay it.
And the end consumer suffers because they're being massively taken advantage of. And in certain instances, you know, as you've mentioned, it can be life or death, right? And if they can't get access to that because they physically can't afford it because a conclusion's happened, then you know you're in this life and death balance. And also all the other economic touch points of it around it discourages innovation, and that if businesses are getting together, why should they bother investing in the next product to beat competitor X and Y if they all just decide to sit there and agree what the price is?
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally that's it. It's interestingly, there's an argument that actually price fixing is inefficient as well, because again, you're not doing your price optimization piece. So you may think you're making more money, but you may not be because of how you're artificially hiking the price.
So why is it inefficient then? Why do we think people are doing it?
It's inefficient by definition, right? Because you're not letting the relationship between supply and demand set the price in the market. You're just setting a price in the market.
So I think, is it a good time to look at to take this a bit further and look at why we feel that actually, you know, online retailers can in circumstances actually be accidentally price fixing. And I think, you know, we've touched upon some of the areas around the fact that retailers are actually going out of their way to price fix. It's a bad thing, that it's anti-competitive, it's inefficient, but also the research is showing that businesses are, you know, never known, you know, to borrow the title from last week's podcast, you know, they're unknowingly price fixing, and it because price fixing is the secondary output of their primary pricing strategy, basically. And I mean, one of the reasons that this article resonated with us is because one of the I'll just find the chap's name. So this is based on the findings of economist Hampus. I'm going to massively mispronounce his surname now. Poppius. So forgive me, Hampus. He's at Lund University, and basically, you know, it's been driven, you know, obviously as you'd expect, by a massive shift to online retailing, online purchases, which again has been rapidly accelerated because of the coronavirus, the COVID situation that we're in at the moment. And also one of the reasons that he touches upon is because the rapid availability of cheap real-time monitoring of prices. Pricing is more visible than at any point in the history of time, right? You know, historically, if you wanted to find out your competitor's price, you'd have to physically go to that shop and look, right? Whereas now you've got the ability to have automated tools which in real time can rapidly, thousands if not millions of products can find at any given time what the price is for those products. and this article reference, it says that 53% of online retailers in the EU track competitor online prices, and then just over half of those then use automatic software to make counter pricing moves. Okay, so this is what we mean by we're starting to get into this territory of perhaps accidentally price fixing, right? So what do you feel, Rob, we mean when we talk about accidentally?
Yeah, so it's been an ongoing theme with us, kind of the fallout from blindly following competitors or solely using competitor repricing strategies. We often talk about race to the bottoms, which is when you get to a negative feedback spiral with a competitor. But we haven't talked much about price freezing. And it's quite easy to see how this comes about. Say I'm running a robot, you're running a robot. We match each other's prices. If neither of us moves a price, the price never moves, right? And so the prices in effect become fixed. Or worse than that, for a consumer, say you're following me and I nudge my price up, you come up with me. I nudge my price up, you come up with me. And we drive the price in the marketplace up just by following each other, not through any relationship with supply and demand and all the rest of it. And again, we are accidentally price fixing.
And it's actually it just sort of raises an interesting point in my mind around you never really hear of stories of people price fixing prices artificially lower, unless you've come across any case studies to say that.
I think I've got an answer for this. Do you know the definition of insider trading?
Well, I'm not the dictionary definition, but I certainly know. Hey, mate, I've got this great stock pick. They're just about to get investment. Yeah.
So there's a rider to insider trading, and you have to benefit from it. So I imagine it's the same with price fixing. So you can insider trade as much as you want, quote unquote, and if you're losing money, no one cares. It's only when you start making money that becomes a problem. And I imagine it's similarly for price fixing, in that if you're colluding to lower the price in the marketplace, bully for you. Like,
you haven't met the underground group that are consumer focused price fixers. They're trying to go out and get everyday low prices across the board. But no, absolutely. So it's generally, the reason for price fixing as well as touch upon is the goal of doing it, the businesses doing it are trying to benefit, and somebody's going to lose out. So we're seeing this. We're edging, to borrow your phrase, into kind of repricing territory here. So what do we mean by repricing? Is that the technology that's causing this automatic changes in prices?
Yeah, by and large. So what those stats said to me is that 50% of e-commerce businesses in Europe are scraping or paying people to scrape data for them. So what that means is that they are automatically gathering price data from the web. We've spoken about how that works before. And then 25% of the e-commerce companies in Europe are using that to automatically make price decisions. That could be using a tool, that could be using an Excel spreadsheet. There's a whole manner of that. Could just be doing it by hand, right, and eyeballing it. But that actually means that roughly, 25% of decisions are competitor driven, not driven by the consumer in any way, shape, or form. So you could argue that 25% of the prices are being fixed, which is interesting. So how does that work? So yeah, realistically, you have a tool that automatically gathers data from the internet, and then you have a piece of software that will automatically implement that decision, usually when a price change has been made. So the tool will recognize that, say, a book on a website has changed by 15p, and then if your pricing rule says you always want to be the lowest, you'll drop your price to either match or undercut that. So if we're talking about price fixing more specifically, So you're just matching your competitors. They make a price change, you match that price change. You both effectively moved your price by the same amount.
So I think one of the bits of data that would be really interesting to get hold of is, of the 25% of the market that is using technology to react to price changes, what technology are they buying? Because one of the reasons that I founded BlackCurve, because I have a fundamental bugbear on why should you follow your competitors if you don't have to? And this is what we mean by the one of the outputs of doing that is not only that you're sometimes you're lowering price when you don't need to, so sometimes you're following, but in this instance, you're accidentally price fixing, in terms of you're accidentally increasing the price unknowingly because you're following a move, and that's causing a negative impact on the market. Because also, are you selling any more because you're making that move? Are you selling less? You're ignoring so many other pieces of the jigsaw. And that's what frustrates me. So I would love to know, of the 25% of the market, how much. One of the easy ways to do it would be to find out how much money people are actually spending on pricing technology, and then maybe using that as a lever. Because typically, really basic pricing technology is around about 50, 100 quid a month, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And most of those technologies will simply be saying, right, I want to make sure my market position is number 3 in the market. Okay, as in my prices are always the third most expensive, or the third cheapest, whichever way you look at it. Or I want to always maintain parity with Rob's Emporium, to borrow a shop from a previous podcast, or Philip's Outdoor Store, right? These are the and if that's all they're doing, is that what we mean by price fixing? Is that there's a risk there? Is that what we mean? These very basic.
Basically that, right? It's that you're not using any information about supply or demand to dictate what your price should be, which is what you're supposed to do in an efficient market. So if we go around the slightly antagonistic legal question of price fixing, it's exactly what you say. You're not actually charging the optimum amount for that product. You're not maximizing profitability. You're just setting a price because a competitor set at a price, or whatever.
So if I'm Philip's outdoor shop, and I'm competing with Rob's Emporium, right? I haven't had a conversation with you to say, hey Rob, I've got these great coats. Should we have them for 100 quid a pop? I haven't. But I'm monitoring you, and I see, oh, Rob's put them for 100 quid. Therefore, my automatic system is going to match you. So we haven't had that conversation, but the technology that we've embedded has forced us to fix our prices.
Yeah, so this is, right, I could talk for a long time about this. This is fascinating, because this is about whether AI can collude or not, right? Because fundamentally, whether you've spoken to me or not, my business process has spoken to your business process, right? And then effectively made a decision based off of it. Now, realistically, there's no way to prevent that, but it's the same thing that we saw this in the city in the 80s onwards, with the rise of the quantitative analysts, and people started trading algorithmically, and you had like the flash crashes and all these kind of wonderfully named days of the week, Black Monday, or I never remember them, but really what happened was that the robots interact, or the AI interact, and then you get basically unpredicted events in the marketplace. For one of my favorite ones in the city is because people think similarly, so they tend to put their limits around the same amount. So that means that when something goes wrong, it goes wrong for everyone at exactly the same time. So instead of having one machine dying, basically that they all break at the same time. And you could argue that that is more and more likely to happen, that more and more people use competitor-driven, specifically pricing technology. Because if we take the race to the bottom, which is the most pathological example for a merchant, say I want to be the lowest in the market, you want to be the lowest in the market, I've got a min margin, you've got a min margin, tumble, we chase each other down to whoever's got the lowest, and we both freeze our lowest min margin. And that doesn't say anything about the consumer's willingness to pay in any way, shape, or form, or how much you should be. It just says that I want to be cheaper than you, I want to be cheaper than you, and I want to be cheaper than you. Now, if that's your strategy, and for smaller companies it often has to be, that's what you can do. But if you're larger, if you've got pricing power, if you've got brand presence, it's a terrible decision because you're losing margin arbitrarily.
So, I mean, the economic arguments about it being inefficient, if we look at price fixing in the definition of why you'd be given a fine and why it's a legal no-no, okay, it's not a legal no-no to have to have pricing technology that enables you to make decisions. I mean, full disclosure, BlackCurve, we sell pricing technology, but really what we're trying to get at is that it is inefficient to use just basic pricing technology because you are in effect colluding with each other unknowingly, okay? And it's inefficient. It's not good for the consumer. It's not good. It's not good for you because you might not need to even follow that price in the first place, and you might actually shift more units if you don't follow that price. Okay, so this is what we're trying to get at in terms of you might need to follow them, but you've got to make sure that you're using all the data sets available to you to make sure that price point is the right point, is the right point at that given time for you.
There are absolutely, we say this time and time again, but there are absolutely cases you will need to follow, right? If you don't have the same reputation as another company, if you're much smaller, say I've got Rob's electronics shop and I'm competing with AO, probably better off following or undercutting AO's price, right? Because I don't have the other kind of service wrapper or brand presence or whatever. So I have to get noticed somehow, and price is one of the ways I can get noticed.
And it might be efficient. It might be efficient if you are Rob's the electrical emporium and it's just you who's just set it up. For your business to be efficient, having a simple basic pricing technology might be the best thing for you to do at that precise moment in time.
Yeah, because I might also not get the volume and sales data in order to be able to calculate this, or I might be launching a new product, or a whole number of reasons that means that supply and demand, the price elasticity optimization question can't be matched. I mean, we see this a lot with new clients, right? Where traditionally people have years of data, but it's the same data point. So from a pricing perspective or price elasticity perspective, it's pretty useless. And part of what we do is we test price and build that data set up over time. But fundamentally, initially, we put people on competitor strategies because it's the correct decision for them, because there's the automation piece as well, right? There's that manual, either checking your competitors or taking the spreadsheet and making a decision and all the rest of it. If you've got 10,000 SKUs, it's a lot of time, if it's possible at all. So there absolutely is a place for these repricers. I just think the more established your business is, or the more sophisticated that your thinking or interaction with the marketplace becomes, the more damaging using a simple repricer is.
And also to come to the really, what are you trying to use pricing for, right? If you're just trying to use pricing to come to the table and have a bit of a skirmish, like, okay, fine. The basic repricing technology allows you to do that, but it will not allow you to grow market share and strive for. And
I think that's a really good point, because I think there is a conceptual fallacy there in that people say, "Oh, I don't need pricing. The market sets the price," right? But the market isn't setting up. The whole point of this podcast is the market isn't setting the price if you're using that pricing strategy, right?
Bingo. The somebody, whoever got there first, has set a set of prices on their website, and the technology is coming along and making a change, and the whole market really is following that whoever's got their pricing leader and however they set their minimum and maximum price. Okay, so if you want to get off this treadmill of simply following somebody else's pricing strategy, and you want to get on this treadmill of using price to enable you to not just have a bit of a skirmish, not just play some silly games, to really grow market share, you've got to open up to using the other data sets to support those decisions. Because one of the reasons that The Economist said that price fixing is so terrible is because it doesn't consider other market forces. It doesn't consider supply, doesn't consider demand, doesn't consider all of the other market forces at play here. And until you can start to work out what those market forces are, you're going to have really struggle to grow market share. And that's when you start to be in a position where you just have to throw money at marketing or throw money at other areas. Okay, throw money at cost cutting, which is not massively strategic or not massively clever. I'm creating broad sweeping statements here, but that's where we're trying to get. That's what we're trying to get at here is that basic pricing technology has a lot of dangers at play. One of them being is that you're colluding unknowingly. So what we're trying to say is that you can step off this accidental collusion, and you can use more advanced pricing technology that enables you to take advantage of supply-driven pricing, demand-driven pricing, take advantage of what's the weather telling me, what should my price should be, and things like that, right? That's really what we're trying completely. To get at.
100%.
Okay? But then you get on the other side, okay, that if you are then followed by the other competitors, they're then following you and following your pricing strategy. Though is that the other danger?
Yeah, well, that's interesting in a sense in that this is incredibly nuanced. I apologise, but like if people are following you and you are responding to demand, it's no longer really price fixing. It's just a second order effect, right? This is kind of what I was getting at when I said that, like, if you don't have the sales data, you're better off following someone who does, like following prices on Amazon or whatever. Because then that actually is still a healthy market. It will just take you some time to react to the person. The danger is when everyone is just using competitor strategies, which I think certainly from my lived experience of 2.5 years of pricing tends to be, everyone cares what the Joneses are doing, right? That's all it is. It's what are my competitors doing? And I guess part of what we try and say at BlackCurve is to kind of look inwardly at you. What are you doing? What can you control? Why are you worrying about what you can't control? You should be worrying about what you can control, really.
Because otherwise your strategy is simply following somebody else's pricing strategy, right? And also to borrow what we were talking about from the John Lewis example, is you run the risk of driving the price down in circumstances where you don't want to drive the price down, simply because they might have better buying power than you, and that is a form of collusion and form of a dragging down that you don't want, right? I mean, I think it could go in tons of different directions here. I didn't really. It's the, if someone does this, what does then happen? If someone does this, what does then happen? But I certainly feel that a healthy market is one which is constantly innovating, is constantly taking advantage of multiple data sets, is constantly trying to get one up on somebody else. And by simply taking a one-dimensional view of, I'm going to put some simple rules in place which says, if competitor X, Y, and Z does this, I do this. And that is loads of risks in place, and that doesn't take into consideration market forces. It simply takes into consideration, where is my competitor's max and min price set. That's all it does. So, a stone silence there also.
No, I completely agree. I don't have anything to add.
Was there anything more on this particular topic that you might want to ask? I mean, I think I would certainly invite. I don't normally like avoid confrontation as in a lot of circumstances, but I would certainly welcome comments from some of our competitors as well around what they feel about price fixing, especially the ones that are around the kind of £100 a month mark, £200 a month mark, about what's their view on this. Because I mean, it's important to say that there is a time, you've said it a few times, there's a time and a place to follow what your competitor is doing, because they are bread and butter products that people purchase simply because of there's a few key suppliers in there, and if you're not on the money with a few key suppliers, you're not going to win that sale. Okay, and that's both going up and both going down. So, but you've got to consider the other data sets.
I'd chip in on that as well, because I'd be really interested to know what so from our experience at the enterprise end, often the pricing operation is very similar to the other end in terms of maybe the strategies rather than the sophistication of it. But so I'd be interested with people who to hear from people who work at that end, especially in a more consultancy measure, whether that's our competitors or otherwise, because I think that's I think there often is a cultural change piece associated with this kind of message we have, because it's not just about that this is the data and whatever. It's about convincing stakeholders that this is actually the case and these are the effects, because this is one area in particular in pricing where you need to really deeply understand what's going on in a marketplace, actually. And we've both got years doing it, so it seems fairly natural. But I don't think emergent behaviour from algorithms isn't something that's easy to understand or something that's well understood in general.
I feel a book coming on. I don't know, some form of research paper maybe.
Get George to write it.
Well, thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Today we've been tackling the question, are you accidentally price fixing? So I would suggest you have a look, ask your e-commerce director, or if you're responsible, have a look at what my technology I'm using. And if your technology you're using is simply making decisions based on what your competitors are doing, you might unknowingly be price fixing. And I'd certainly encourage you to have conversations about what are the technologies out there that can help you avoid this inefficient practice, because not only do the economists show that collusion is inefficient and basic repricing technology is supporting this unknowingly. It might be, I just need to add for my legal team there, and it might be worth considering, right, how do I really grow my market share, and how can pricing help me do that? Pricing is one of the best levers for growing your business, okay? Growing profitability in your business and supporting rapid growth, okay? Because it goes straight to your bottom line. And if all you're doing is simply following your competitors, you're just having a bit of a fight, right? Nobody's benefiting from that situation. To grow your market share, you've got to think wider, you've got to think broader, you've got to use more data sets to make your pricing decisions, such as supply and demand data sets. So as I said, we've been BlackCurve. We help e-commerce businesses make pricing decisions. This is our podcast, E-Commerce Matters, available on all major podcasting platforms. We look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.